The Cumberland School Committee intends to conduct this meeting remotely. The public can participate in this meeting remotely, but not in person, by calling 312-626-6799 or by going to the Zoom link that is on the district website on the event calendar page. So the first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. And I just had the discussion on whether there is public access to this meeting. And Mike, people are attending via Zoom or
Yes.
is anybody on the phone? Just curious.
Not at this time. We have some that are coming through their computers as public, but nobody on the phone.
Okay, perfect. The second item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from July 21st, 2020.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. And then the next item on the agenda is discussion of new positions. So I will hand this over to Mr. Damana.
Good evening, everyone. In a moment, Mike, would you mind prompting the slides? I want to do some introductions, if you don't mind, putting the slides up on the slide deck. So if you go to the first next page, Mike. So as part of our budgetary plan, we added, one is actually an existing position that we changed a little bit. We changed the job description, and another is an addition that we added via a grant. The first position that you see posted there is the multi-language learner and Tier 3 ELA coordinator. And I'd like to welcome Lindy Frijol to the district. And in a few minutes, I'm going to have Lindy talk a little bit about her experience. But she's a veteran of 14 years as an educator. And that position was an existing position that Linda Iannetta held as the L coordinator for the district. And we have since then refined the job description. The next position or person that we've brought on board is Shannon Bissett, who is a 20-year veteran of our own school district. And she'll be handling, she's actually the math PD coach for the district, and she's also the Tier 3 math coordinator. And that position is being paid for via our grant monies, Title II grant monies. It was approved recently. So we're happy to have that position added to the arsenal. Before I have them talk a little bit about themselves under item C, I just wanted to share a little bit about the actual job descriptions and why we have chosen to head in the direction that we are with these jobs. So the original ELL position, or English Language Learner Coordinator position, that was traditionally held by Linda Iannetta, was a position that was helping us get some systems in place because we were disorganized in terms of how we approached instruction in the district, how we staffed our schools, and how we approached just generally the system for L instruction. And in Linda's tenure, she set those systems in place, helped us get off the ground on the right foot. But the addition of Lindy allows us to look at the position through a different lens. And it's going to be a position where she'll be supporting schools, impacting pedagogy, helping us with making database decisions around L instruction. She's very well versed in data, and in a few minutes, like I said, she'll talk a little bit about her experience. We're really excited to have her. The other position that Shannon Bissett has chosen to take, we are very thankful that she chose to jump on board to our district leadership team, is a position that's going to help Kathy Cardoza expand her ability to provide internal professional development to our teachers in the realm of mapping at different grade levels. She has a plethora of experience at community school, working with at-risk students, but she, I would say, is an expert in our math curriculum, and she's going to make a great teammate for Kathy in helping us grow our capacity to get to our goal, which is to be the top performing district in the state. You know, we're not done. That's what these positions are here for, and that's what we continue to strive for. So with those two things in place, Mrs. Friedman, would you mind if we allow Lindy to talk a little bit about her background, and also Shannon?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Lindy, would you mind going first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you
Hi.
for having me tonight. So a little bit about my background. So I started my career in education in Cumberland. I started as a teacher at ESL teacher at BF Norton. I taught there for 3 years. And then I transitioned to Providence, where I taught as an ESL teacher for 2 years. After that, I moved to East Providence as an ESL specialist, where I worked co-teaching with teachers K-6, push in and pull out. Following that, I transitioned to an ELL coordinator position at Blackstone Valley Prep. So I was working there, elementary, middle, and as they grew into their high school. So elementary, middle, and high. While I was there, I went through the principal residency network and earned my admin certification. And following my tenure there, I transitioned to South Kingstown, where we started the dual language immersion program. So I oversaw the dual language immersion program and the EL program in South Kingstown. And then most recently, I was the MLL director in Norwich, Connecticut.
Thanks, Lindy. Shannon, would you mind sharing a few things about your background?
Hi, everyone. Yes, so I've been in Cumberland for 20 years. I started out subbing and landed a job at BF Norton as a gifted teacher, but I also was working part-time as a 4th grade teacher. I then went to community school, and I was at community school for about, well, I've been at community school for 19 years. I was a 4th grade teacher for 12, and I've been the math interventionist there for the past 7 years. I've worked with the Tier 3 students. I've worked collaborating with colleagues about data and about supporting them in the classroom, not only with the Tier 3 students, but the Tier 2 and the Tier 3, and how teachers can support those students. We've done a lot of grade level data meetings where I've run those meetings, and we've analyzed our benchmark data with teachers and decided on the kids that would be in the groups and the kids that we needed to support. Also, I've done a lot of presentations of PD at our school on math. I've been part of the mapping math team last year for the grade 3 to 5. So I've worked a lot with all the 3 to 5 teachers and with Kathy Cardoza doing our mapping. So I'm familiar with all the data. Now I'm just taking it to the next level for the K to 8 buildings, and in using that data to analyze, find our missing gaps, and proceed from there to how we're going to fill those. I've been working with the math interventions, but now as another differently, trying to help them and them support their schools. I'll also be coaching teachers on all our new teachers and our teachers this year that have had to change into math that have never taught math before. So I'll be coaching teachers and supporting teachers in the core instruction.
Thank you, Shannon. So these are multi-dimensional positions where Lindy and I were having a discussion today, and we were joking around. These are essentially, you know, a few jobs woven into one, and they're going to wear a lot of hats. And I'm excited in particular about the leadership that they're bringing to the table. They have a really strong background in working with teachers, and that mirrors the model that we're looking for. You know, with Kathy and Deb being veteran teachers, the best type of professional development comes from teachers themselves. And we're going to continue expanding on that model. We have no reason to change course. Our data tells us differently. So we want to continue to expand on the systems we put in place so we can reach our goal. So with that being said, we can pause. Does anyone have any questions for us as a group, as a team?
I have a clarifying question. So the which position is funded by the Title II, the math coordinator?
The math PD coach, yes, and tier 3 coordinator. The math PD coach part of the title isn't there, but that's the main title that it went in under the grant as. Yep.
Okay, and then the MLL, multi-level learner, that stands for multi-level learner?
Correct. Multi-language learner.
Multi-language learner, of course.
Multilingual. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was part of our budgeted plan, Tony?
Yeah, so Linda Iannetta, the ELL coordinator position was a full-time position. We were considered a high incidence district years back, and Bob pushed to have, I believe Bob is on the call, he pushed to have the L coordinator added to our district, and it was an existing position. Last year, Linda worked part-time because she was transitioning into retirement. And if you remember, Diane Arzumanian was fulfilling sort of the other half of that position, but a position like an MLL coordinator job cannot go into a grant. So it has to be absorbed by the general fund, and it has been part of our budget.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? No?
Not at this time for me.
We good?
Yeah, excellent.
All right,
Thank you.
Mike, can you cue the next slide, please? All right, so one of the things, I think this is the second agenda item, I believe, on the agenda. How was it agended?
Yep, professional development, discussion.
Yep. All right, so this is item number 2. Our infrastructure is really built around how we approach our curriculum and our philosophy around our curriculum. And one of the things that has contributed to the work that we've done as a district, and I think how well we've performed, is, you hear Bob talk about it all the time, is we're a very database driven district. Everything we do to our curriculum comes from some sort of outcome to force, or shift, I should say, not force, a different outcome or a better outcome. And we pride ourselves on being proactive in that realm as a district, right? We get data, we're proactive about it, we attack it, we try to put systems in place where we can get information to teachers, shift practice, and then shift data. But the current conditions with COVID and all of the challenges that we face with running 2 school systems, a distance learning school system, a hybrid system, it's spread a lot of our resources thin, and it's changing the focus. It's a forced shift in focus is the wording that we wanted to use, because we are now forced to use time to adapt the curriculum to a reduced instructional scope and sequence because of those variables. So whereas under a normal year, we'd be trending toward continuing building momentum in the direction we're going in, we now have to sort of stop and head down a different path, because teachers need to understand how we're going to shrink our curriculum and choose specific constructs that they need to teach. And our coordinators use the terminology curriculum compacting, and in about 30 seconds, I'll allow them to expand on that, both Devin and Kathy. And it also creates some professional development challenges. So we think the Achievement Subcommittee should be aware of how COVID has impacted our office. So Devin and Kathy, would you like to interject at this time, please? I can't
Sure.
see you.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Thank you.
To build on what Tony said, first of all, good evening. There is a lack of time this year. So this year we have 5 professional development days as set by the state calendar. Within the district, we have a curriculum hour for elementary and middle. So that allows us those times, which again, 30 hours, and then do the math for an hour a month, to meet with our mapping teams and our content leaders. And so to provide you some perspective, I looked at our PD schedule from last year, and I was actually shocked. I met with the K-5 mapping team over the course of the beginning of the year to March 13th for a total of 29 days. The middle school teams met for a total of 18 days. Social studies at the middle school, 5 days, which is 52 days versus the 5. So it's a challenge for us. So what does that mean? Well, as Tony said, the work is different this year. So students have less instructional time currently. Hopefully we'll go back to school, 5 days a week, and it will be back on track. So the work this year is, ELA has year-long standards. So I can look at the scope and sequence of the year and look at standards of emphasis for each grade level. They're different, for the early grades versus the other grades, and help the team understand what the instructional pathway reduction will look like. That in turn means some of the assessments will be eliminated based on the instructional pathway reduction. But the goal is still the goal. And our goal is for students to develop proficiency, standard proficiency for their grade level. It's a challenge, there's no doubt. But what makes me hopeful is the work that we've done over the past 4 years, because teams do want to come together. We have a cohesive culture thanks to Tony's vision around standards-based work. And they understand, they have a deep understanding of standards, especially in grades 3 through 8. So we know how we've looked at outcomes in the past. We match them to the critical standards, and we can revise and adapt assessments. I had a quick meeting with kindergarten teachers today, and I think one thing I'm spending a lot of time grappling with is I have to do a lot of front loading so I can present to certain teams, especially at the younger grade levels. Here are the minimum essential components. So for example, in kindergarten and first grade, foundational skills, meaning non-word reading, letter sound, blending and reading, learning how to read words, to read sentences, to read text, is their primary responsibility. So in the 40 minutes, we were able to agree to what is a minimum instructional pathway. I'll share that with, Tony and the principals, and we'll begin there because we can't get too far ahead. Teachers are doing unbelievable work. They're in front of kids. They're doing live instruction. They're trying to then do small group instruction. It's a very different world. And I must say, from my seat, we're very fortunate to have the teachers we have doing the work that they're doing. Any
Thanks,
questions
Deb.
about that?
Kathy, do you have anything you'd like to add, please?
Sure. Well, Deb gave a great explanation of our work this year and how it's going to look different. In the past, we were fortunate that we could have teachers come during the day and get sub coverage. And we always feel as though, that's where the expertise comes from the grade level teachers who are teaching the material day in and day out. But like Deb said, this year we have to do a lot of front loading because we have limited time with teachers. Even though we have those PD days, we have 9 grade levels to meet with during that one day. So this year, we want to make sure students are engaging in grade level work while trying to fill any gaps that occurred from last year. So that's one issue, loss of learning from the spring. And the second issue is now compacting because we have less instructional time due to the hybrid. So some of the work we're doing is we're looking at the again, priority standards, what standards, are the most important. We do have to prioritize. We're looking at the grade level progressions to see what they may have missed or not had enough instruction in the spring that would affect the learning that's going on now. So in certain grade levels, like 5th grade, we see it as more of a problem. There are a lot of prerequisite skills from the very end of 4th grade with fractions and decimals. So we're looking at the progressions. We're looking at places where we can eliminate lessons. And again, this is work that we want to do with the teachers, but Deb and I are going to have to do a lot of front loading so that we can get that work done. And then when we meet with the teachers, talk about, address some of their issues, talk about pacing. Also, a lot of the gaps are not going to be the same. So we talk about how we have to address that more during intervention, because some kids were very engaged during distance learning, very successful, and other kids were not as engaged. So now we have people that are in different places. Not all students have the same experiences for one reason or the other. So the professional development will be ongoing. Like Deb said, we will meet during curriculum meetings, during CPT time, during professional development days, but our focus will be, instead of on responding to data like we usually do, we'll be more prioritizing standards, compacting where we need to, looking at pacing and supporting teachers the best way we can, because they're working really hard and this is a whole new territory for them.
So in the ELA world, we have tried to get building coaches in place to help with pedagogy and the complexity of ELA instruction, build continuity in the schools. On the math end, we've struggled to add resources just because of, we haven't even completed our coaching. We're piecemealing this together as we go. But Kath, could you talk a little bit about the flexibility that adding someone like Shannon allows you and how it expands your ability to do your job?
Sure. So originally we thought Shannon was going to be more involved with the tier 3, which is, meeting with the math interventionist and looking at math intervention, and also going into buildings because most of the coaches that we have are really coaches for ELA. So this would be a position where Shannon would go in and coach. But Shannon has so much experience with standards, particularly in the upper grades, because she taught 4th grade for many years and she's co-teaches a lot in 5th grade, that she's able, when we have one professional development day, like I said, with 9 grades to meet with, it's not possible for me to facilitate all those meetings. So Shannon's going to facilitate the 4th and 5th grade meetings. And then actually I'm talking with another math interventionist who has quite a bit of experience. Before she became a math interventionist, she taught 3rd grade. So I'm hoping she can facilitate some of the 3rd grade meetings. So that way I can meet with K1 and 2 in the middle school. So it's a really big asset this year that she can take on some of that work with grade level teams.
Thanks, Kath. And Mrs. Friedman, do you mind if I shift back to Lindy for a second in her role before we move forward and pause for some questions?
Yeah.
So getting back to Lindy and how the addition of Lindy changes our landscape for our L subgroup. She's going to bring to us in a lot of ways a diagnostic and on-the-ground diagnostic in buildings for L instruction and the quality of L instruction. She's going to help us create professional development opportunities for those teachers and implement best practices. And she has had evidence of doing those types of things and leading teachers in that. So I'm going to prompt her to talk a little bit about that if she chooses to in a few moments. And we know that the subgroups or sub-pops are a big part of the accountability system in Rhode Island in terms of school report cards, their performance and growth. So it was time. We needed to go to the next step and the next level on how we view that instruction. And I believe that Lindy's going to help us get there and help us take that next step. So Lindy, do you want to talk a little bit about how you've done some PD around that and influence practice and pedagogy?
Sure. So in the last couple of districts that I've worked in, what I've typically done is gone in at first and observed what practices already exist in the district, how teachers are teaching their multilingual learners, what's happening in tier 1 instruction, what's happening in tier 2 and tier 3. Are there L teachers teaching tier 1 all day? Is there push in, pull out? What does that instruction look like? What best practices are happening? What isn't happening? Just go in and do kind of a deep dive in the district, what's happening at the elementary level, at the middle level, at the high school level. How many L teachers are in place? Are there enough is there enough L teacher support? And just get a really good diagnostic. And looking overall at the data, looking at you know, the long-term data, looking at our long-term Ls, that tends to be an area that people don't take a good look at. Sometimes our Ls get stuck being identified as an English learner. It typically takes a second language learner about 5 to 7 years to gain proficiency, but they should gain proficiency and exit out of L status. So if we're not seeing that, there's a reason. So we need to look at all of these factors, and we need to, you know, look at how they're doing on assessments, on classroom assessments, on higher stakes assessments, and put all of these pieces of the puzzle together and kind of formulate a plan. And then put some coaching in place and professional development. And that's what I've done in the past. And it's typically me leading that professional development for teachers, and try to improve those best practices that we know exist around core instruction. And that's where you will start to see, you know, student achievement progress and improvement progress.
Thanks, Lindy. I appreciate it. I couldn't unmute. At this moment, do you want to pause for questions if there are any? Sure.
Yes, definitely. I'm not sure, Heidi and Dennis, if you have any questions. I have a few.
Go ahead.
I don't
I'm going to wait to the end before I ask. I kind of want to hear everything. So,
Okay.
but I do want to say thank you for being here. So, especially the new hires.
Okay, so my question is kind of a clarifying question, and you know, what Deb and Kathy shared with us in terms of professional development and reduced instructional time due to the hybrid model. So first on the PD side, so I guess I didn't realize, so we get the new state calendar and there's a bunch, or 5, I guess, or more PD days on that calendar, but that actually is, you in the past have been able to do a lot more PD outside of those days, right?
Our entire, yes, you're correct.
Yeah.
So we talked about this today. We T-charted this. Our infrastructure is essentially non-reliant on full PD days. I mean, to have them or not have them is just kind of like a whatever for us. The ratio, I think, in hours that Deb was referring to, I don't know if she used the numbers, but we're talking about curriculum mapping generates about 300 hours of PD for teachers within a calendar year versus 30 that you would get, this year using whole days. I personally, I'm only speaking for myself. Whole day PDs are difficult to plan. They're best utilized within the building, in my opinion, mainly. It allows principals to work on things that they need to spend time with their faculties. When you are planning professional development for 450 people or more, when you include TAs and support professionals, to do that with quality and essentially without money is essentially, it's really difficult to do, if not impossible. So we've flipped the system on end, and we rely on internal ways to do that and to differentiate. So we're trying to be real precise and decisive with the pieces that we're adding to our team. Shannon and Lindy are continuing the additions that Deb and Kathy have brought to the team. So we continue to expand on that model. But the bottom line is full day PDs, can teachers tend to a 6-hour long intense PD, and can we get what we need them to know in one intense session versus doing it in chunks over time? So I choose part B.
And we're finding that we can't do it in chunks over time this year because of the hybrid model, because of what are the...
This year, we don't have substitute, I'll let Tony talk. We don't have, before they would get substitute coverage and teachers would come out and work together as teams. And this year, because we don't want to introduce, first of all, more people into building, one problem. The other problem is we don't have subs.
And if it's a hybrid model, we can't be pulling teachers away from their students because of the need for instruction.
We're trying to find alternate ways to do our work. It's just going to be less time with them. We're problem solving around it, but the bottom line is time is time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I understand that. Then the reduced instructional time because of the hybrid model. And so the work that, one, are you able to quantify what the reduced instructional time is? And then two, what I think I heard was that you are now looking at these subject areas across grades to prioritize which standards must we get to in this year. And it might mean teachers can't get to all of the standards because of the reduced instructional time. Is that a true statement?
ELA, I'll let Kathy talk about math because it's quite different, but ELA, they're year-long standards. And as I said, the work that we've done over the past 4 years, we've identified standards of emphasis that continue to come up through deconstructing RICAS and looking at the items that come up through developing writing prompts around those reading standards. And in K-2, we have the new program, and the new program was just that, a program. We spent so much time last year determining what instructional components we would use. So we have the luxury of taking certain ones away, but we still have the standards of emphasis that are year-long in ELA. And it's very important, for example, in kindergarten and first and second grade, that there is a completion of the program, even though we don't like calling it the program because we've built it and deconstructed it around standards and instructional concepts, because grade 1 relies on what K has done and grade 2 relies upon what grade 1 has done. So I think it's really important that, as I said, the minimum of what the instructional components are. So for example, there's listening comprehension. There are texts that kids engage in for listening comprehension. and wonders. Well, we can pull some of those away, but they're still learning how to ask and answer questions, which is RL1. And in grade 8, the team has come up with their own solution, which we met prior to school. In ELA, they're year-long standards. So we achieve all the standards. We're just removing a text. The text is the vehicle by way the standards are taught. So I don't know if that answers your ELA questions, because remember, the goal is for kids to achieve grade level proficiency. It isn't like we're trying to, it's a very difficult situation, but we're trying to be very strategic around the elements that are taught, the assessments that are given. And we know what our standards of emphasis are in ELA, and we have outcomes that have proven Cumberland continues to grow, focusing on those standards. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
ELA?
yeah, partly. Yeah. Mr. Collins has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question. How much room is left? It sounds like obviously the emphasis is on preventing regression and, in compacted curriculum. How much room is left for enrichment? It's an honest question, and if the answer is not much, how much room is left in example of ELA? How much room is left for enrichment?
Could you define enrichment for me?
So you're so in an ELA class, let's say it's a middle school ELA class, and there you have a curriculum, and you're working. Say the 8th graders are working on long composition. I don't have the Rhode Island standards right in front of me for ELA. But say one of the big standards is deconstructing text, answering a prompt, long composition, the certain benchmarks they have to meet. So your curriculum is developed around meeting that standard, because that's a big standard, or reading comprehension or whatever. So you've met that standard. How much room is left for, and when I say enrichment, even though it may not be part of the standard, creative writing or poetry or haikus or world language, world literature? Does that clarify the question a little bit?
Yeah.
And if that, how much room is left for those extra?
Well, I don't know if that is really the goal of the curriculum. I mean, I think what happens within in the middle school curriculum is if your student, Mr. Collins, your child is reading to point of view, reading and writing to point of view, as a new 6th grade student, the teacher has to demonstrate that for the child, how to do that, showing them what we call exemplars and deconstructing the exemplars.
Yep.
And then you increase the rigor by introducing a second text at some point.
Yep.
So the rigor is really built into the standards, and that's what I mean. The teachers truly understand the ELA standards, and analysis is what kids have to be able to do in the middle school. That we know what the exemplars of RIDECAST look like. For what a 6th grade student is really an explanation of the evidence. The highest score in RIDECAST, the exemplar paper, the anchor paper. In 7th grade, we're getting a little bit more analysis. In 8th grade, there's a lot. So the rigor of the standard allows for enrichment, so to speak. It isn't like a separate activity.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want me to answer the first, actually both kind of questions. Math is a little bit different because they're not year-long standards, and a lot of them are very sequential. You think about math, addition, subtraction, then multiplication, division, fractions, decimals. So it's a lot of moving around. It's not, like I said, you might accomplish, finish geometry at one point, you'll never go back to geometry or data and analysis. So depending on what they missed out on last year, it could be just certain standards, not necessarily, the year-long standards. With that being said, though, we do, like ELA, have major clusters, supporting clusters and additional clusters. So we have to base our time on that. What are the, the most important things that students need in order to be successful the following year? So you might look at, what do they need 2nd grade? They need to learn how to add and subtract 2-digit numbers with regrouping. If not, they're going to struggle in 3rd grade, or they can't go to 5th grade unless they have an understanding of fractions and decimals. So we do have to do some prioritizing. Do we want to hit every standard? Absolutely, but I think it'll be more about the emphasis and the amount of time we spend on those standards. And as far as what Mr. Collins was talking about, it's a little bit different at the middle school, but into the elementary day, there is a 90-minute math block. And it's actually longer now because, well, in K-2, we're not spending much time on science, so we can spend more time on ELA and math. There's a 30-minute intervention block, which isn't just for students that are, struggling learners. That intervention block is to meet the needs of all students. So those higher performing students will also, maybe have more challenging work during that 30 minutes. So it's 90 minutes of core and then 30 minutes of intervention. But instead of intervention, we call it win time because it's what I need, because it's not necessarily an intervention. It's meeting the needs of students at the level that they're at. So that's the goal. This year, because of the situation, the win time, it might be students that are higher performing, working more independently, and the students, the struggling learners working in small groups with teachers. But those kinds of activities, will be provided for those students.
And they're still working around the year-long standards, just at a higher level.
I just have a follow-up question pertaining to that. So in the effort, obviously it makes sense to meet the standards. At the elementary and high school, I don't think would be impacted because it's kind of credit-based. But at the elementary in particular level, or even at the middle school to some capacity, will any of this, because of the timing and the lack of in-person instruction with hybrid, will any of the other subjects be compromised? For example, will extra ELA time be given at the expense of social studies or science or anything in that or foreign language, maybe at the middle school level?
Yes.
And I don't know.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, and it doesn't have to be for the you, Mr. Damana. Anybody who wants to jump in and answer that.
Okay, sure. Kat, do you want to answer for science?
Sure. So in K-2, because students, like Deb was saying, those skills of learning to read and math, they're not having science instruction at this time until January 1st. We're just focusing the day on ELA and math. In the upper grade, science is 3 to 5 is the reduced amount of time. In the middle school, they're running through their normal schedule. So however many classes they take, they're getting those every day: science, social studies, ELA, unified arts, math. So it's the only effect right now is at the elementary. One of the reasons we made that decision is because science are grade bands. So we have science standards K2 and then 3-5. When students take the next generation science assessment, they're only on materials from 3 to 5, the grade band 3 to 5. Not that K2 doesn't provide a foundation, it does. But within our literature, at some point too, we have social studies materials, science to some extent. Some districts don't even have a separate science curriculum. So that's why we made that decision.
At the middle school level, the schedules aren't impacted. They're seeing their core subject areas. Same thing at the high school. The secondary level is not impacted by that. But at the elementary level, as Kathy said, science is primarily the one that takes the biggest hit.
And the instructional time is reduced. I mean, that's the fact of the matter is that in the hybrid model, the instructional time is reduced.
It's impacted. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's impacted. Yep, for sure. Yep.
I mean, the assumption is on the students in days off, they're, working, they're going to be assigned things to do. So I don't think it's necessarily going to be in half, but a lot of that is going to be reinforcing things that they've learned in class. Yeah. Sometimes it will be new learning, but it will be impacted.
It depends on the learner.
Well, the days that they see students in elementary, it has been decided there's no new learning. It's just reinforcement.
Yeah, and I use my own children as a gauge. My high school student, she can't believe I just said that. She has plenty of work to do. And she's doing quite well. My 5th grader, she's also, last year she struggled with distance learning, but this year with this model, using that reinforcement time, it seems like there's a bit more depth to the learning. And she's doing quite well too. So I kind of keep my thumb on how my kids are doing to gauge sort of, of course, it's not indicative of how the system is doing, but it gives me a litmus of it.
And we know this is less than ideal, right? So again, I was on the call with the kindergarten mapping team, and they're concerned about the days the kids will be home. I said, it's reinforcement. What does a kindergarten student do for reinforcement 3 weeks into the school year, right? You're not going to be doing 6 hours of work. It's not realistic. Kindergartners will never do independent work for 6 hours. And I think it's, once again, when you listen to teachers and you understand their professionalism and yet their worry, we have to set expectations that are realistic for student learning and for teachers who are responsible for student learning.
No easy task, that's for sure. Other questions from the subcommittee before we move on to the next agenda item?
None from me.
I have one more question, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
This is kind of a hypothetical, but you've presented a lot of kind of challenges. And aside from the budget issues and the health and safety, since this is an achievement subcommittee, what do you think is the single greatest challenge to student achievement this year? Is it the schedule? Is it the uncertainty? Is it the lack of staffing, PD? And that could be, any of you can answer that. The single greatest challenge to student achievement in the current climate.
I'll defer to the coordinators first.
Well, I think, again, from my lens, in terms of making sure students are engaged, whether it's distance learning or hybrid, and teachers are delivering similar amount of instruction, right? That's with time is the problem, because you know, when you think of the distance learning student versus the hybrid, when January comes, we need to reevaluate and say, and some of the distance learning kids might become in-school kids, whether it's full-time or hybrid. So there are many different plates. And for me, I think we want kids to be engaged. And I think teachers are feeling better about distance learning. You know, they're all doing it now. And also, we don't have enough time as we had in the past to meet with teachers. So I think time is what I would consider to be a primary stumbling block.
Yeah, I would have to say time, instructional time for sure, because unfortunately, you know, the work that students do at home is largely out of the teacher's control on those independent days. So they have to, you know, focus about the time they have students in front of them. So it's loss of instructional time. And then on our end, lack of time with grade level teams of teachers.
Yeah, for me, I look at everything systemically, and Deb and Kathy fill in the details, and now we have Shannon and Lindy do the same. But for me, any variable, I know that Mr. Collins asked for the single most, and it's hard, and time certainly rises up, but all of these things contribute. And systemically, to me, you're talking about impacting achievement. It's all these pieces coming together that drive the bus. It's no one thing. It's all of these things concurrently working together that have, in my opinion, allowed us to move forward. So, you know, the just us alone, in my opinion, having to stop from going back to what the slide says, Mr. Collins, a forced shift in focus. For 5 years since I've been in this position, I've talked about a singular focus and us being hyper focused on, you know, doing the things that we're doing in terms of professional development. The fact that we have to veer from that concerns me the most systemically.
If I may, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, Lindy, if you don't mind, I would just to really piggyback on what Tony has said, really, and what, you know, Kathy and Deb have said as well. I think because all of our routines are just turned totally upside down, we have to rethink everything that we have done and done successfully. So the challenge is, how can we sustain, what we've established here, with all of our routines turned totally upside down. So I mean, for me, we've talked a lot about how our routines have been impacted, and the fact that we're not going to be able to spend as much time with staff reviewing data as we have over the last several years. I see that as the biggest challenge, because we are a data-driven district. Every decision we make is based on the performance of students, and it drives the decisions that all of our educators make when they're working with students. So that to me is the biggest challenge.
Yeah,
I know
there's
Lindy
there's no precedent, there's no case study you can look at, because nobody's ever been in this situation before for this long with the uncertainty. That's why I was asking, is the uncertainty moving forward too. It's, we go full person, who knows what the next month, 2 months school year is going to entail, and we have to plan for that, and that you have to plan for that. And that's, I commend you for your flexibility, and I apologize for interrupting.
Lindy was going to say something.
Yeah, I know I'm very new. This is my first day, but one of two things that I think might impact. So engagement is high on the list, but I also think access to devices and access to internet and is high on the list in terms of student outcomes. I don't know what it's like in this district yet, but that's a key indicator to how our students are going to be successful. And especially when thinking about our multilingual families, whether they have access to devices, access to internet, and not just our multilingual families, but all of our families in our district. So do they have access to devices? Do they have internet access? Are they able to get on to log on every day, to get engaged, to log into Clever, to access their assignments? So that's a key indicator for me.
And I know our focus, well, for Mr. Dabata's office, the focus is on K-8, and that's where we spend a lot of our time talking about achievement. And we, even within this committee, I think don't spend enough time talking about the high school level. And I think some of these same questions could and should be answered at the high school level. I know that Adolfo is on the call, but I don't know that he was expecting to speak to any of this. So if it's not something that we can do tonight, I think we should follow up on this with the same conversation and the same questions at the high school level. I know it's credit-based. I know there's some differences, but this amount of instructional time, amount of time to be able to get through a curriculum, the assessments that need to happen, it would be good to hear the challenges that are being faced at that level as well.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Costa.
Hi. So I tried to turn my camera on my phone, but I think by the time I figure out how to switch that setting, probably almost done so. But I do welcome that opportunity. Matter of fact, earlier when the discussion was happening, I did send Mr. Mitchell a text, and I asked him to how would we go about getting the high school on to talk about some of the same things that you're talking about tonight. And for me, the question that Mr. Collins asked really made me be reflective on all the conversations I've had with the staff this year so far in such a short time that we've been in school. I got to say, I think the staff, the teachers across the whole district are so dedicated to our students, but we need to pay some special concern to our staff too, who are the challenges that they're facing and instructing in multiple worlds, and it's going to take its toll on them too. And then when we add in that variable of shifting from one school model to another, and even at the high school level, what we're getting now, which is a good sign, I think, is we have many parents contacting us and saying that originally I chose this model, but now I want to shift to the hybrid model. So even those numbers and what teachers are expecting in front of them versus on the computer continue to shift. So there's a lot that we're asking for our teachers, and so I have a concern about them too, in this marathon of a year that we're going to have.
Yeah, so definitely I would add that, and we'll talk about it anyways, but future topics, and maybe we can schedule our next achievement meeting and have the high school, just the same conversation, but at the high school level. And then anything else, Mr. Costa, that you feel we should know. So that would be
Fantastic. Fantastic. I welcome that opportunity. Thank you.
Mr. Costa, would we be able to get the curriculum coordinators in there too at the high school level, the department heads?
Yeah, I can invite them if you would like for them to be at the very next achievement sub, as long as I give them, some fair warning, they would be more than welcome.
Yeah, sure.
To attend.
Yeah, because I think especially at the high school level, the needs of one department are different than the other. So it's very departmentalized actually. So I'd like to hear from like kind of whoever's available.
Absolutely.
You're muted, Ms. Friedman.
I see. This is a tremendous amount of work, and we're just 2 weeks into it. Although also 2 weeks from today is when a majority of kids will be back starting the hybrid model. So a lot we've been learning in the last 2 weeks, and then a lot we'll continue to learn as we move into the next phase of 2020. So if I don't know, Mr. Devana, if there's any other comments you want to say to close out this topic before we move into the next topic on essentials.
Sure. In closing, Dr. Santa is with us, and she has spearheaded much of the work for the focus of our first professional development day. So I wanted her to, if she's willing, to share a little bit about the focus that will be impacting all of our teachers in the district on PD Day 1. Rach, can you do that?
Looks frozen.
So as part, can you hear me? I have allergies, so my voice is a little funky. I do not have the COVID. I always you have to emphasize that. You sneeze or cough, you have to tell everyone it's not the COVID. Anyways, we, as part of our mental health plan that was submitted to the state, we are continuing our work with regarding using the school compassionate culture analytical tool for educators, commonly known as the SCAPE. We started doing a little bit of work last year in the high school and some Cumberland Hill and North Cumberland Middle School, and a little bit at BF Norton. However, this year we have taken that tool, which is a survey tool that measures leadership and compassionate school communities, conscious awareness of your emotions and stress, courage and resiliency, confidence and positivity, and understanding of equity. Keep in mind, this is pre-COVID, so it's kind of interesting. We've taken that same survey and all the schools, with the exception of the high school took it last spring. So we don't need necessarily baseline data from them because they've already taken it. All of the other schools have taken that survey. From that survey, we get data on those 5 areas I just talked about. The preliminary data that we've looked at, it looks like that the 2 areas that it's given to the staff, all staff, that the staff are identifying as being weak areas for their own professional development is conscious awareness of emotions and stress, which makes a lot of sense, and understanding of equity. This aligns really well with the new, I think the committee is called the Diversity Committee that Erin Oliver over at McCourt is spearheading. So taking that information, I'm working with the Yale Fellows, and which is, I think you're know that I'm part of the Childhood Trauma Learning Collaborative through the Yale Fellowship, as well as New England Mental Health Supports. And there's one other agency I'm blanking on right this second that's working together. And with that, they're going to provide free, by the way, all this has been free, the free use of the survey tool, free use of PD, and they're providing us with folks to help us with a 3-hour. They're capacity like mental models like we're looking at the neurobiology of trauma and mindfulness, understanding how that affects the brain, doing a session on advancing equity in education, and then breaking up, and each building will have a representative that is, I purposely have asked it not be a principal, but someone other in leadership in the building. And do conversations regarding their own individual building data and what that means for their building. And those folks that are spearheading and helping us with those breakouts will have a little bit of prep time with this whole group of people that are helping us put together this PD. Again, completely for free, which I think is pretty amazing. This will be done through Zoom. We're asking that in general, we're asking for the whole district to participate. There are a couple things regarding like a safety care training that I need to get people trained, so that's going to be triaged for them as being more important at this particular moment. And the other training we're providing is on October 5th, which is an early release day. At 2:30, we're doing the neuropsychology of reading disorders for anyone who wants to participate. So some principals are requiring their schools to participate in that during that particular time, but we're also recording that PD so that other people can access it at different times. So those are the two big projects I've been working on, among many other things.
Oh, great. A couple of questions, Dr. Santa, because I'm just not sure I got the terminology.
Yeah.
This was
I had to write it down, so I got it right.
Did you call it the SCATE tool?
The SCATE survey.
Okay, can you tell me what those things?
Yep, the School Compassionate Culture Analytical Tools for Educators, SCATE.
School Compassion
Culture Compassionate Culture Analytical Tool for Educators.
Analytical tool for educators. Okay, and that was this is also being provided by, what was the name of the organization again?
Well, there's a couple of different people that are working together, but I'm part of the Yale Fellowship for Childhood Learning Trauma Collaborative, which is coming out of Yale. Part of that particular component, I'm a fellow of that. So this is one of the projects they're working on. But SAMHSA, which I can't remember stands for, as well as New England Mental Health Transfer Station, that was the one I couldn't remember before, but now I remembered, are all folks that are particular project where they're working with schools to develop compassionate models to work with students who have trauma as well as equity issues within schools.
Okay.
So they're actually, I'm pretty excited about the project, but they're more excited about the project than I think I am, in that they have a district that's kind of embraced it. And then the way we've aligned it to our returning plans, as well as what we've aligned it to the diversity committee. So instead of doing yet another survey, we can use one tool to help us disaggregate data and look at all those components for all of our schools. And again, those two areas that seem to be popping up for everybody is the conscious awareness, emotions, and stress, and how that affects students and staff. It's not just about kids. And then understanding equity. So that's the first step, was doing that survey. The second component of this will happen in the spring, where we're actually looking at a student component. It's a supplement to the SCATE, where students take it and help us with more information. And then we can also have another 3-hour PD day. They probably do more than that if we wanted to, but we're thinking about another 3 hour, or another couple hour PD.
Awesome.
This spring.
Awesome.
So,
really great. In the first PD day is is when? When's the first PD day? Okay. All right, great.
So this is not, I think it's amazing, because we're gonna go.
You're breaking up. I don't know if it's just for me.
I've been having trouble with Zoom. I've been booted out 4 times. So I thought it was because my hair wasn't combed or something. But I did put lipstick on, which is rare when you wear a mask all day. So what I was gonna say. Wow, I forgot what I was gonna say. I got distracted by myself. Sorry, it's been a long day already. What I was going to say is that we do have some of the schools that took the survey prior to COVID. So I think it'll be really interesting we can compare COVID, pre-COVID to now.
Yeah.
But in general, this is giving us a baseline. It's really just to give us baseline data to see what happens when we provide the PD and help people to understand what's going on. I'm very interested in folks, not only in the equity PD, but also understanding how trauma affects students and help. And the reason why they call it compassionate is really to have that deep understanding on why a student may not be performing well.
Yep. Okay. Great. Thank you, Dr. Santa. Okay, we can move to the next item on the agenda.
Sure.
The Essentials Framework.
Mrs. Friedman, Dr. Masterson has something that he'd like to just quickly interject if you would allow.
For sure.
Mrs. Freeman, Mr. Collins, I know there was a few discussions tonight about the challenges that have taken place because of the hybrid model. I just thought I would share an extreme positive that's taken place. And a lot of the feedback I'm hearing from our teachers are that they really are excited and are really getting to know their students at a very high level. And they're also providing a high level of engagement because they're working with 12 students max at a time in a class. One of the other things that we've been able to do at McCourt, I know Mrs. Coughlin talked about it at one of the town hall meetings, was the office hours for our teachers. So one of the concerns obviously was that the independent learning day was going to be mostly on the student. We've now freed up our core teachers to meet with students on the independent learning day to provide assistance and help on their independent learning. So we have some positives that have also worked because of the schedule. So I just didn't want anyone to think it was just a lot of challenges.
Yeah. Thank you. That's also something my 11th grade daughter said, that she's been able to stand out in class because the class is small and because it's online and maybe not everybody participates as easily. So I think she thinks she's setting a good first impression with her teachers, which was a little easier in this model.
Madam
Interesting.
Chair, can I ask a question, kind of a follow-up with Mr. Masterson? I don't know, and anybody can really answer this. Would you say so far this year with remote learning that the attendance has been better in the spring? Because it's one thing I've noticed in my own classrooms, it's glaring. The attendance is, I don't know if you guys have the same experience, maybe Mr. Masterson or anybody else.
Yeah, so our attendance is much better. And I think it's because the feedback we heard from our families, our teachers, and the work that we put in as central office support and school administrators, and trying to be as normal as possible with our school hours and our structure. Once we provided that, we get a lot of great will within the community and a lot of support, and our students are responding. So we're seeing a huge difference in attendance as compared to the spring.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Now to the next agenda item on the Essentials Framework.
Yeah, Mike, would you mind cueing the slides again for us, please? Thank you. So just really quickly connected to the PD work and sort of continuing on that conversation. One of the things that is part of our district focus was shoring up our tier 2 models in the district. We were deficient across our district, I'd say, in all of our tier 2 systems. So part of the response or district response was creating the Essentials program for our schools. It's currently at the secondary level, but in particular, a team of us went to the Marzano Institute. The Marzano Institute is a highly recognized national model for educators. And we attended one day of a two-part series. We were not able to attend the second part due to COVID, but essentially, when we launched the Essentials system at, in particular, the middle school level, I'm referencing the middle school level for the moment, we launched it as a a program that would support core instruction. So students who were struggling in ELA and mathematics, we would buddy up the course and provide an essential skills course to shore up their skill set in their growth toward proficiency. So what the Marzano Institute did was they created proficiency scales, and we purchased the proficiency scales for a number of content areas. And one of the goals is for us to use that framework to be a quasi-curriculum for essentials teachers to follow. So rather than working ad hoc in trying to meet student needs because they're seeing volumes of kids, our tier 2 segment of students who are nearing proficiency is a very large segment of kids. So how do we best approach that? Well, we felt as though this particular framework from the Marzano Institute would provide teachers with a roadmap to teach essentials in helping students meet those language and math proficiencies. We're hoping to expand it out from the middle school out, both up and towards the elementary level. Jay and I have had a few conversations around the Marzano Institute. We're going to be spending some time in my office game planning how to provide professional development for those essentials teachers. We did suffer some losses in terms of solid essentials teachers from the cuts. We lost someone at Dr. Masterson's school who taught math. She was an excellent educator, and certainly when you have those things happen budgetarily, it sets your whole program back because now you're reinvesting in teachers, reinvesting time, having to launch the whole system again. So we just wanted everyone to know that from an achievement standpoint, we're going to be spending a tremendous amount of district time over the next few years shoring up the essentials framework in the program, and I think we have the right tool to help us do that. So that's really all I have to say about that, unless Jay wants to interject or any of the coordinators.
I would just say that I've seen the program and I've had some very encouraging discussions with Mr. Damana, and our team is ready to go. We really want to hit the ground running. We can't wait any longer, and I think that the systems that we develop curriculum-wise with the Marzano scales is going to take us a long way. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jay. And just lastly, it is a framework that special ed coordinators can utilize in supporting students depending on where they are with their needs too. So it's not just a tool for regular ed in tier 2. It's a tool that can be used by special educators should those skills be aligned with what those kids need. So I just wanted to add that too. It spans all students. And that's pretty much all we have for this evening for everyone.
Sorry, go ahead, Heidi.
Thanks. So last year was the first year you had the essentials classes in the middle school. What were some of the lessons that you learned from that, and how did that inform this year?
Well, launching a program like that, we were in violation of the BEP in terms of how we handled tier 2. So that's why I wanted to focus some district resources in it. But in order to execute it, you got to have the teachers to teach it. You've got to have the schedule to allow for it. And you've got to select the kids and know exactly what their needs are. So there are a lot of things that contribute to getting a system like this off the ground. We wanted to launch it and connect it to our curriculum just to get it going. Is that the way that you want to do it? Probably not. You probably want to start with the scales and have something in place and allow for that to happen, but that would have been at least a 2-year process. So I think from an instructional standpoint, Jay and Tanya's on the call too. She's an instructional coach at McCourt. They could speak to what they're seeing on the ground, but the bottom line is that this framework will, in my opinion, help us get to the goals that were originally set forth when we put the essentials program is to get kids to proficiency. So We just wanted to get the program off the ground because we were deficient in how we were handling tier 2 students. So this is just going to make a good situation better in my view. Tanya or Jay, do you have anything you want to add?
I can let Mrs. Rayo speak. Her and I have had discussions. She's in the PRN, as everyone knows. So she is taking on a more of a leadership role in our school. So I have given her total overseeing of the Essentials program with me watching from a distance. So we've had quite a few discussions about where we're going in that direction. And she also really helped with our planning to get this year off the ground. So Mrs. Rayo, feel free to step in.
Am I unmuted? So really, I'm a little caught off guard here for a second, but essentially with the essentials, what we sat and did was kind of take a look at, where are we deficited with PRN? We look a lot at equity and inequities and where we're falling apart, looking at data, disaggregating data, finding issues. So kind of what the Essentials teachers and I did with Jay's help was we looked at where our students are with what limited data we have right now. And we started looking at, ways to approach students that can build or fill in gaps that they have right now. Things like instructing vocabulary with specificity, with, building background knowledge, with using context clues, strategies and skills that they can use and transfer to all of their coursework. So what the plan is now, and I was actually just texting with our Essentials teachers while you guys were chatting, is that, every couple of weeks, we want to sit down and specifically look at data and look at where our students are. And Mr. D'Amano with the Marzano Institute guidance, I really think we can build a very strong program that's going to support all of our students in all of the tiers. And I don't know if I answered everybody's question. If not, go ahead and fire.
No, and I think just to add to that, one of our focus to begin the school year was a universal look at academic vocabulary as well as vocabulary that falls within the curriculum. For example, in ELA, students are tasked with reading specific selections. So looking at that vocabulary within those selections that we know are going to come up within the curriculum or potentially on a state testing situation, it's being able to look at context clues, close reading, and reinforce those vocabulary skills that really, as Mrs. Rail brought up to my attention, shows up on 30% of the RICAS assessment.
20, yeah.
So we felt like that was a good place to start the school year universally for all of our students. And that's just only going to be able to help close that gap to start. And then we can then move into the more critical concepts and skills that are necessary to put it all together and apply it to their learning.
And I think too, the other thing I'd like to add is, when we're talking about vocabulary, it's not the old school here's a word and define it and move on. It has to do with academic vocabulary, words that they're going to see on a test like RICAS, closely, identify or analyze or give a detailed analysis, actually explaining what those words mean specifically, and really helping them build their ability to use those words in their conversations. And then, like Dr. Masterson said, to grow the program from there. This is just a really solid way to begin our year with these essentials students and to give them something that they can pull from as they move into the year. Also, I mean, when you think about it, and I'm not sure how familiar some of you are with our math program, but it's heavy language. And, science, there's a lot of specific languages. And when you're looking at our students, like our MLL students, from all the levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, some of these vocabulary words are very difficult. And if you don't understand them, you are not going to understand the concepts that you are doing in the classroom. So, when we talk about vocabulary work, it isn't just, reading, picking a word and defining it. It's going to move into a bigger scale. And, I can't wait to dig into the Marzano work to see what else is laid out in that.
Okay, thank you. So next on the agenda is discussion of future topics. And we already added one tonight for the high school professional development discussion and the hybrid model kind of achievement related challenges and successes from the high school level. We had a number of items on our list. We've had a rolling list of items for achievement. And I guess I would, ask for input or kind of prioritization for other areas that we would want to cover.
I would just say to keep the good to keep the list small, because there's so much with each topic. There's so much to discuss. So I think, like you just said, use the term prioritize, and I think, obviously, the people that have spoken tonight have voiced their concern on what should be prioritized. So preventing regression, and I think that should maybe drive what we put on the agenda. I mean, that's just my opinion. So when it comes to prioritizing.
Mr. Damana, do you have, some of the things that we had on our list before, kind of, we have the achievement related budget. That's, kind of one of those standing items that we plan for on one of these meetings. We had from the spring this idea of doing this distance learning wrap up and then moving forward. I don't know when we'll be in a position, and based on everything we talked about tonight, to kind of evaluate the impact of distance learning, if that is something that you would be looking at. And, we've talked about the achievement strategic plan and future school reviews. We were in the middle of doing all of that before COVID hit and having each school come in. So I think our most immediate next item is to look at the high school, have Mr. Costa and his team come in, and we can plan that for our next meeting. And we can talk about when the best time. This meeting is kind of off schedule, but we can decide, Dennis and Heidi, when's the good next time for that. And then Mr. Devana, maybe we can just continue, you could consider what would be the most important things to address with this committee if we meet on a monthly basis, and try to keep the achievement front of mind. I think, what we're hearing out there is that everybody, there's a lot of talk about health and safety, and there's a lot of talk about all these different learning models, and maybe not always enough focus on achievement, which is something I think that this district really prides itself on. And I know you and your team do. So keeping that front and center will be good for everyone.
Sure. I think Mr. Collins makes a good point when he mentioned what he kind of went into deep thought mode when he talked about, keeping things small. One of the things that I mentioned to my office the other day was we got to get back to being who we are. And right now it's a little difficult to do that because we're, between Bob's office and our office, we are fielding a lot of, any overspill of issues that are going on in the buildings come to us. So we're wearing a few more hats than we normally do, considering the circumstances. But we'll find some things. I think measuring student success, we need to define what we value. We within my office, we may even debate what we value in terms of what measure may indicate regression or where we are right now. So, and that's good, healthy conversation for us to have. And certainly maybe that's a direction we'll go in after the high school goes is what measures that we're going to take a look at for where we are and where do we go from there.
Yep. Okay. All right. And then the next item on the agenda is public comments. If there's any member from the public that wants to speak, they can raise their hand or unmute or anything like that.
See anybody at this time?
Okay. And so I want to thank everybody for their time tonight, and lots of really great work that's happening and so much that's going on. Thank you for everything you're doing for our students and our teachers and our staff. We all really, really, really appreciate it. And the last item on the agenda is adjournment. So I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got it.
I was ready. I just want to let you know I was ready.
We got this timed.
Okay. And the meeting is adjourned at 6:55. Everybody have a great evening.
Thank you,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.